Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Devapod and today I'm going to talk about my favorite books of 2021. So normally what I do is I write down the points, or like when I'm wrapping up books or when I'm talking about books, I want to make sure that I have gathered my thoughts. So I do write a script and I follow it, so then it's easier and I'm not rambling in the video, right? But for this video, this is gonna be totally unscripted because if I can't tell you why I like these books without looking at a script, then I'm not gonna mention them here because these are my favorite books. I should know why I like them. Also, if you haven't watched my previous video where I wrap up all the books that I have read in the last few months, check it out. I do go into detail about some of the books. I don't know if I think one of the books are here. Anyway, so it has been a really good reading year for me because I was very picky about what I read and I made sure to read the things that I really like and that I knew I would like, depending on like the reviews I would watch from my booktubers who have like similar tastes and bookstagrammers, so all that. Without further ado, let's get into the books. This was really hard to pick, but yeah, these are definitely my favorite books this year. Like, they weren't published this year, these are the books that I read this year and that I really loved. Okay, so the first one is gonna be no surprise to anybody, and I will stop hopefully recommending this book in every video, and that is the Devapod Trilogy. The first one is City of Brass and the second one is Kingdom of Copper and The Empire of Gold, all written by the wonderful S.A. Chakraborty. This is one of my favorite books of all time and it's definitely have to be on this list. This follows this con artist called Nari who grew up in Cairo, and then she accidentally summons this jinn and he takes her to this magical world full of devas called Devapod, and Nari realizes that she is actually part of a long lost descendant of one of the most powerful devas in Devapod, and the story follows her life, her coming to terms with who she is and as opposed to like what she has known. And then we also have a prince called Ali living in Devapod, and he is a very religious, very devout deva, and he is somebody who is constantly struggling with duty and loyalty. And then you have Dara, who is my personal favorite character, who is a jinn, and he is a 1400-year-old warrior who is called an Afshin, and they used to serve Nari's family. Like, he used to serve Nari's family for centuries, and the story basically follows the three of them. And then you also have Devapod as a whole and the political and economical conflicts that arise from with Nari showing her face in Devapod, because that creates a bigger threat to the current king, who is Ali's father. And yeah, like, so many things unravel, and what I love most about this book is the characters, and I haven't felt so attached to a book in such a long time the way I did with this. It is so beautifully written, and the conflict of loyalty and duty is something I really want to see, especially with all these characters, especially Dara and Ali. You see it a lot. And of course, Nari is a healer, so she's not your typical sword-wielding badass woman you see in a lot of fantasy, and I really love that about her because every conflict that she resolved was in peace, and it was really beautiful to read and beautiful to see a woman resolving things and not using violence to do so. I personally have no favorite book of the three. Like, all three books are really great. The world building, the religious aspect, all of it is incredibly written, and I'm always a fan of reading morally great characters and the choices that they make and why they make them, all of that. It is very much integral to the story and to their characters, so it's just such a well-written book, well thought out story. There's nothing for us as a reader to speculate because everything you need is in this book, in these three books, and I highly recommend you read all of it. Okay, so the next one is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This is definitely a favorite of mine. Like, I flew through this. I think I already have a reading vlog for this as well, because after reading the Devapod Trilogy, like, I read that with Inosh and Aisha, and we all fell into this rut fell into this, I don't know, like good book hangover or something, that's what it's called, and just nothing we picked up was good enough. And then on like randomly I picked this up because I had it on Audible, so I started listening to it, and I think I read it in like a day or two. It is magnificent, and I actually bought the book after I read it because I really want to reread it. It's about this astronaut. He's a microbiologist who wakes up in space with no idea who he is, what he's doing there, and why he's in a spaceship. And he has two corpses next to him when he wakes up, and he realizes that it's his crew, and he has no idea why he's part of this mission. He starts remembering as the story goes on, and there's something that's really exciting that happens midway through the book, and I don't want to spoil it, so please go read this book. It is actually better than The Martian, which is Andy Weir's other book, which I loved. It was one of my favorite books when I read it, and I think it's still one of my favorite books, but this is definitely, his writing gets better every year, except for Artemis, which I haven't really read, but I know that it wasn't a lot of people's favorites. But anyway, back to this. This is great, and it has a lot of, it's very science heavy, so he's using a lot of these scientific theories that I've heard and I've known. Those are still theories in the real world, and he's using them as if like, what if they were actually real, and what if that actually happens. This is what this book is about, so I really enjoyed that. And the character, like, again, just like Mark Watney, this guy is really funny, and I like his dry humor. And there's another character that shows up later on, and I really like that dynamic. I like the friendship, and I also really like the ending of this book, which with The Martian it was kind of obvious how it would end, but here I had no idea what was gonna happen, because unlike Watney, who was stranded in a planet, this guy was stranded in space, so I had no idea whether he was gonna rescued back to Earth or what's gonna happen. So yeah, I really liked how it ended, and the writing style is very easy. It's very easy to read, and also I know a lot of people did say that because it's science heavy it gets boring, but for me, I really like science fiction. I like it when it has a lot of real life scientific theories as opposed to science fiction. So yeah, something I really enjoyed. I hope you pick it up too, because I don't think I've ever read a book like this, because I do read a lot of science fiction, so I hope he writes more of these books, because I would definitely buy anything Andy Weir writes. Moving on to a really good thriller that I read, and that is Rock Paper Scissors by Alice Feeney, which came out this year, and this was one of Gabby's recommendations, so I picked it on a whim, and my god, it had one of the best plot twists, like plural, that I've ever read. And I have read a lot of thrillers just like with science fiction, so this was such a great book. And the audiobook especially is narrated by Richard Armitage and Stephanie Racine, and I'm actually currently in the middle of like listening to it again, because I just love their voices and I love how they're narrating the story. And especially now that I know what happens, reading it in retrospect is so great, because all the clues are there. You're like, oh my god, this is what's happening, and I understand what's happening now. In the beginning I was so intrigued as to what's gonna happen, but reading it again, I'm like, okay, all the clues are here if you're reading it again, but you're not gonna pick them up when you're reading it for the first time. The story is basically about like a married couple who's like at the end of their marriage, like they hate each other like so much that they just don't want to be together, but as like a last resort to reconcile their marriage, they go on this getaway to this chapel inn. The atmosphere is like very wintry and creepy. They are trapped in that chapel with like nowhere to go because a storm hits, and it all takes place in like within like a weekend, I think. It's not a lot I can tell you without spoiling. So the pacing is really great. The characters are what makes the story what it is, because there's only two of them, right? And in the book, while the present day story is happening, you get to see letters written by the wife to the husband, and you see like how happy they were and how that beginning where they are now, it's very sad to see, and it's very interesting to read when you're reading it again. So definitely pick it up, because what I've noticed with most of the thrillers is that they rely heavily on plot twists and like the the tension or like the intensity, which is fine, like that if that's the story they want to tell, but I prefer stories like this where the characters themselves are like a threat to each other, and what goes in their head is what creates the intensity of the story and makes you not want to put it down. So those are the books that I really want to read, and I loved Rock Paper Scissors. I'm definitely, yeah, I even now when I'm reading it I can't put it down. I don't think I will ever buy the book because I actually prefer the audiobook so much, because I don't even feel like I need to own it because the audiobook is like fantastic. So if you want, you can either buy the book or listen to the audio. Alright, so the next one is the Devapod Trilogy by R.F. Kuang. This is long overdue, and my friend Inosh has been telling me to read this ever since we met, and I finally did, and I'm currently in the middle of finishing The Burning God, which you will see the reading vlog for that soon. I did make separate reading vlogs for all three, so I will leave the ones that are already out. This needs no introduction. It's a book that has taken the book community by storm, and it's well deserved the hype. It is everything you want it to be, and even though the story is it's been done before in so many other ways, it's one of the few books that I've read that described war and the futility of war very authentically, and how it's supposed to be written, instead of like romanticizing it or making heroes out of these soldiers and all of that. The story follows this girl called Rin who escapes her small town by taking this test that gets her into this military academy. Like, it's an elite military academy, and she's basically trained to be a soldier who is later on called to the front lines when there's like an invasion. And the events are inspired by the Sino-Japanese War and then also the Opium Wars. The story is very interesting because how it is written is that what if opium was like a source of power instead of a weakness? So you are still addicted to opium, but it's also a way you harness the power of the gods. And Rin can harness the power of a fire god called the Phoenix, who gives her the ability to conjure fire. Fire is an essential part in the story, and I feel like after reading it, I do not want to be anywhere near to fire. And the amount of times that they talk about burning corpses, this can be very triggering to a lot of people, so I would definitely read the trigger warnings before you pick it up. Like, it is a book that everybody should read, but it's also like you decide if it's for you to read. So you can't consider the Devapod Trilogy as 3 books, because honestly, when I first read the Devapod, it wasn't as good as the City of Brass, but this became so much better in retrospect when I started the Dragon Republic. And those 2 books are, so like when I'm reading The Burning God, I'm so invested in the story and I love the trilogy, so it's just like your love for these books will only grow stronger as you read them, because you can't consider them 3 separate books. They are 3 parts of like a larger story. So there's, yeah. And Rin's character is, I finally found a female character that I really like, and then that is so well written. Like, she has that inherent femininity within her, and also she's like a brilliantly written protagonist. That, because with the City of Brass, with the Devapod Trilogy, I really wanted to see the perspective of the other 2 characters, Ali and Dara, but in this one I really don't, because I prefer to stay inside Rin's character, like stay inside Rin's head, know what she's going through, and see her own descent into chaos and madness. So that is, and she also handles like R.F. Kuang handles addiction, PTSD, drug withdrawals. She handles all of that so well. And also there's a lot of mention to colonization, which I really enjoy, because this is a side of the story that the history books conveniently forget, and she has managed to bring it out and show it to the world. This is what they did, this is what my white man has done, and there's no coming back from that for a lot of the colonized countries. So I really like it. I mean, I already know like the series is like, it's all 5 stars for me. Like, all these books that I mentioned, I gave them 5 stars. So one of the things I really want to mention with the Devapod is that it didn't make me cry. I know a lot of people bawl their eyes out and cry a lot reading this book, but crying is not the only way to inflict emotion, and like this book really does bring out all these emotions out of you. But it just didn't make me cry. It just made me, if anything, made me frustrated and really angry, just like Rin is. It's a great book. I don't have to recommend it to you. I'm pretty sure this is already on your TBR. If not, pick this up. This is such a great ride. The entire story and the characters, of course, are developed and written so well. They have their own storyline, their own story arcs. Definitely one of my favorites. I'm definitely gonna read this again because it's again another story that I want to read in retrospect, because while I do remember the events that happened in the first two books, I think once I've finished it and reading it again will have a stronger impact, especially with Rin, Kitai and Neja, all three characters that are like very essential to the plot. That is it, you guys. These are my favorite books that I read this year. There are more, and like especially like Malibu Rising, the 5th season, Jade City, all of them I really enjoyed, but it didn't make it to this list. Like I said, I picked the ones that I really enjoy and I really want to read multiple times, that are like ingrained in my head. So I hope you like this video. Give it a thumbs up and I will see you in the next one.